And some advisors don't actually practice. Their practice is with people. I practice when people aren't around so that when I get to the game, the lights are on and I do it the right way and there's no mistakes. Because like you said earlier, we want that one-of-one experience, and you got to practice. When you watch golf, these guys aren't just practicing while they're competing for millions of dollars. They're taking thousands of practice swings that you'll never see. And that's why they're so good.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder of Milemarker. And today I am joined by Terry Parham Jr. Terry is a co-founder and wealth advisor at Innovative Wealth Building. He is also an aspiring woodworker, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. And I love the story behind that. Terry, thanks so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a family member make me one of these before. And I was so inspired that I said, hey, I got to learn how to roll up the sleeves and get my hands a little dirty. So I'll let you know as my career progresses.
I love it, man. And for those of you who didn't see this on video, he just showed this really cool wooden dollar sign that got carved and woodworked into a dollar sign. For those of you on video, you just saw, and what you know already is that Terry's a money man. He makes a cash register ring, which I think is great. All right, so Terry, the first question I ask everybody who comes on the show, and you're not going to be any different. I've had over 100 of these conversations on air, off air. And one of the things that I love about our industry is that everybody has a unique path to this space. Some people, that path might be traditional. Maybe they followed in family footsteps, and a lot of people have done this, and that's how they got into the industry. Some people had a completely different career, and they come into this industry through the side door realizing, oh, this would be a really good fit for me. But whether your path is traditional or untraditional, I've found that everybody has what we refer to as a money moment. And that money moment is the moment in your life where the light bulb kind of clicked and you said, this is what I want to spend my career doing. Out of all the things in the world, I want to be in financial services. I want to be a wealth advisor. So for you, Terry, what was that money moment that led you to sit in the chair you're in right now having this conversation with me today?
Yeah, I would say mine was definitely not planned, and it wasn't traditional. I went to college, had no idea what I wanted to do, eventually stumbled into economics and psychology. And then one random Tuesday, someone approached me about an internship as a financial representative. Of course, I didn't really know what that was, but they paid like $100 a week. And I thought, hey, I can buy a lot of pizza and other things with $100 a week. So why not? Fast forward maybe 3 months later, I'm working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and absolutely obsessed with the work that I was doing as a financial rep. And that's when the light bulb turned on for me. I was probably 20 years old. And I said, this is the thing that I'm going to do for the next 40 years. So it was by accident, but I'm so fortunate that it happened. And I can't imagine doing any other type of career.
I love that. That's a cool story. So you go in as an intern thinking, hey, I'm just going to check this out and whatever, and I'm going to be able to buy some pizza. And then you kind of just fell in love with it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I got started, the concepts just made sense. Growing up, my dad would often pose money mysteries to me. He would say, well, what's the catch in this? And he'd teach me how to pull out the old fashioned Kelley Blue Book and actually page through and look things up and then compare prices to the dealership. So I had all these little things in my life that I never really knew could be a career. And then just through the internship experience and just seeing the work done and the impact on people's lives, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It sure supplanted my ideas of being a lawyer or anything else, because once I was in it, I couldn't leave.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. So you said you studied economics and psychology. I actually want to double click on that really quick, because I feel like more and more advisors that I talk to today, younger, older, however you want to talk about it, say, man, I wish I had studied psychology, or I wish I had maybe spent some more time on that, because so much of this profession is actually more psychology than anything else. Obviously, you got to know your numbers. Obviously, you're going to take care of people's numbers, but you can have the most financially optimized plan, but if you don't have somebody who's psychologically in it, they're going to blow up that financially optimized plan. So how much do you think that's been an advantage for you that you studied psychology, and how much do you pull on that in your work?
I think it's been a huge stepping stone. My sister is a PhD clinical psychologist, and she's a little older, so I have to give credit to Dr. Britt. for helping me to understand the implications and the advantages of the psychological field. But during my career, I've taken that foundation and I've continued to learn more because
Mm.
we think we make decisions with logic, but really it's emotion. And we use the logic to back up the emotion so that we have alignment and feel good about things. So we're constantly challenging ourselves every day to figure out how to help people do better for themselves according to their wishes, even if they don't know what those are overtly. So there's so much
Mm.
psychology in every single thing that we do with clients. And then as a dad of two, those are science and psychological experiments from day to day. So it's been a huge game changer in how we're able to help people accomplish their own goals by figuring out their motivations and their fears.
I love that. All right. So you have referred to yourself as the finance professor, and your LinkedIn in order says that you are an educator, an advisor, and then an advocate. Why is being an educator for you so critical as a financial advisor?
For me, I think it's really twofold. One part is for myself. I started this industry when I was 20 years old, and I would sit across from the table from people that would say, I'm old enough to be your dad, or I'm old enough to be your grandma. And they'd say, why should I care what you have to say when you don't have life experience?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really argue that. I'm like, you're right. I haven't experienced even a fraction of what you have. So from that moment forward, I took it upon myself to try to get as smart as I could, as quick as I could. I wanted to take the 10,000 hours that it takes to become a pro and compress it. So I got obsessed with reading every article, every book, learning new strategies, tools, and then relaying the information in easy to understand ways by using the whiteboard, pictures, stories, analogies, etc. So part one of the education emphasis was for myself. I wanted to have the confidence and I wanted to have the knowledge to be able to help people at a higher level. The second part is there's the old saying that knowledge is power. I agree and I disagree because I think applied knowledge is power. So by helping apply knowledge and share knowledge with others, I've seen lives become transformed. So for me, educating is like teaching someone how to fish so they can feed themselves and feed their family forever. And that's why education is such a big part of what I do. My clients trust me, my friends and colleagues trust me, but I don't want them to just do things that I mention or recommend because they trust me. I want them to understand so that they can remain committed and truly feel good about the steps they're taking.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want to ask you about this, and we might kind of tie all of these together, but you talked about how you became a sponge. You wanted to compress that 10,000 hours, how you love to read articles and books and things like that. But speaking of books, you and your wife, Kenna, made a couples workbook. I think it's called Love and Money, Building Wealth Together. This is a little bit of a cheeky question, but what's harder, getting your finances aligned as a couple or writing a book together as a couple?
I would say for us, getting your finances aligned as a couple. Writing the book was actually pretty easy. Surprisingly, maybe, my wife and I, we've worked together for at least 7 years now, which most people I would not recommend. But yeah, even though we're both certified financial planners, we're both chartered financial consultants, we're both professional money experts, we have our own challenges seeing eye to eye and being aligned on financial topics. So that was really the genesis of the book. We looked at each other and said, if even we have these conversations or these disagreements, imagine the value others might find if something like this can be a tool to facilitate better understanding and conversations. So that was a really long way of saying, I think personally aligning is actually a little harder for us than just the process of cranking out the book and the workbook. That actually worked out really well.
That's great. I think that actually ties nicely back into the education component though, right? Because, one thing that's always sat with me about advisors and what you all do is I frequently said that you could take a household and you could put them across the table from 5 elite advisors by any measure that you want to have. And that household might get 5 different approaches to what they should do in their household. And then yet you confirm it here with, hey, me and my wife are both, certified financial professionals and we see the world a different way. So the education component really does need to be, hey, you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, have to understand what's going on here because I might tell you one thing, my wife might tell you a different thing, and this person might tell you something else. So you really have to understand what's being presented to you here so that you can really be accountable and in charge of your finances, even if you're outsourcing some of the execution and delivery of all of this to a professional. I mean, is that a fair statement?
I think that's 100% fair. There's an old saying, ask 5 advisors a question, you'll get 7 answers. And it's true, because the true best answer for the person across the table depends on a myriad of factors. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think advisors will ever be replaced by technology. Technology is great. You should use technology to make yourself even more efficient and effective, but it doesn't have the ability currently to parse the meaningful subtleties in a way that can be life-changing for the person across from you. Oh, by the way, our clients often don't know what they don't know. So without being prompted, they may not know the right questions to ask or the right rocks to lift up to look under. So I agree with you 100% on that.
I love what you just said too. I was reading something this week that highlighted the fact that AI is going to obviously be able to help transform how we learn and all of those different types of things, but you have to know what questions to ask. And it's probably going to really bring that into being one of the most important skills for humans as all of this stuff accelerates and whatever. Is some questions just won't be worth asking anymore, but then you're going to have to get really good at knowing what to ask. It's still not going to be a mind reader or any of that type of stuff. And I think that's a great aspect where advisors are going to be very prominent. Is advisors know the right questions to ask. They know how to prod, they know how to poke, and it's going to be really, really helpful for clients and education.
Yeah, absolutely. When folks are going through their financial lives, they come across a lot of transitions for the first time. And the value of working with someone who has guided others is this may be the 100th time or the 1,000th time that they've seen someone reach that point. So we're able to borrow experience from tens, hundreds, or thousands of folks to then help the person in front of us make the best decision at the right time.
All right, I got to ask you about that. I've often heard advisors say before, hey, this might be the first time a client's hearing something, but it might be the 1,000th time that we've said something. How do you make sure that it doesn't come across as rote or routine or old hat when you're delivering something that for this client might be life-changing stuff that they're dealing with for the first time, even though it's your 1,000th time? How do you make sure that it still feels like it's one of one for that client in the way that you engage with them and interact with them?
Yeah, that question reminds me of a Michael Jordan quote about why he played so hard and why he played through injuries, because there was some kid in the audience who that would be their one time to ever see him play. And I feel the same way about financial planning and working with clients. So I think the first thing is just making sure you're excited. Like, this is great. This is fun. This is life-changing. And if you bring that energy, that's going to help them to really embrace the moment and really dig in and enjoy making steps to improve their life. For me, I am constantly learning new things. Last week, I was at a retirement planning conference. Later this year, I'll be at several other things. And I'll hear something on a Tuesday and then implement it and use it on a Wednesday. So although some of the foundational pieces stay the same, the truths about money change almost every day. So by just staying up to date on changing trends, by implementing new strategies that you find that are even more impactful, by being on the cutting edge of using AI or behavioral finance, I think you can keep it exciting for yourself and the client, which helps you to be super engaged and helps them to really have that one-of-one experience that you mentioned.
I like that. Even in the way that we're having this conversation here, I can tell that you're just a natural teacher. You're a natural communicator. And I'm sure that came through a lot of work. I think a lot of times looking natural and seeming natural comes through work. But your passion for educating is apparent. Part of that passion, it seems, is that you have a willingness to work in different mediums and you create content in different ways. You and your wife make this workbook that we talked about. You have a pretty educational YouTube channel and things like that. What was the impetus for being a content creator?
That's a good question. I'm thinking about where I grew up and how I grew up. And there was no content creation really in my life growing up because, my dad was in the Army 30 plus years. My mom was a nurse for most of that time. We moved and traveled every 2 years. So maybe just moving and starting over every 2 years helped me to become creative. Living in LA this past several years, there's creators everywhere. My neighbors are on Netflix or they do the sound for Apple's commercials. Everyone seems to be a creative of some sort. For me, I've just benefited so much from learning in textbooks, on YouTube, and podcasts, on Spotify, using books on Audible, that I've just found that if I really want to try to help more people, I have to create and deliver content in more ways. And unfortunately, I have many, many tools that I've created that haven't seen the light of day yet. So recently I hired a PR person to help me create and put these tools out. So later this year, folks will see the financial health assessment and a bunch of other things that I've been working on over the last few years. So my creativity is all about giving different ways for others to engage with the content and then improve their lives financially.
I love that. Well, let's talk about that a little bit too, because I think you mentioned this earlier in the podcast, and I think some of the stuff I've seen, you love a whiteboard. And I think one thing that's cool is that you're someone who can draw on a whiteboard for clients and then make jokes about, art skills or things like that. And it's really engaging. But then when you do that, just you and the camera, I mean, talk about that. How different is it when you can thrive off of somebody's response in person versus when you're just making content for YouTube and going about that? I know the creativity is there, which is great, but talk to me about the differences.
Yeah, in person, it's so fun. I used to train financial advisors for 2.5 years, and I could spend hours at the whiteboard fielding questions and making every answer some drawing on the whiteboard. So that one-to-one or one-to-many interaction for me is huge. I'm happy to stand in front of a group and answer questions for 2 hours straight because that's just how I'm wired. What's funny is when I create content, it's super easy for me to just talk to myself. And often my content's done on one take. I don't take multiple takes. I don't prep things in advance, be that good or bad. And I just get on there and I talk to the camera. I think part of that is when we started Innovative Wealth Building, every single month we did webinars. And during COVID, I did a bunch of webinars. So that probably helped me get comfortable talking to myself and not seeming like I'm talking to myself. So definitely a different skill set. I do miss being able to physically write on the whiteboard as often as I used to. But by telling stories and showing pictures, I think it still comes across and leads to better retention of education. And it's a lot of fun with any medium that I get to use.
One thing I've noticed in this short time together is that you're really good at kind of taking, and this is probably the whiteboard concept too, but you're good at taking abstract concepts and trying to make them a little bit more concrete, either through the quote about Michael Jordan or through, if you talk to 5 advisors, you might get 7 different answers, right? You take these kind of more abstract concepts down into a really simple, easy to understand thing. Maybe that's just, your talent as an educator or things like that. But I also know you've mentioned, hey, you did a lot of work in trying to compress this 10,000 hours into this. Was there stuff that you studied on how to simplify communication through analogies or through things like this? Or, is that just something you've always been able to do?
I think a part of it is just natural. But when I was a new advisor, one of the 20 plus year advisors walked down the hall. He kind of grunted at me and tossed a book. And it was story selling for financial advisors.
Okay.
And then I had a mentor who was my district manager. He was big on the whiteboard. He didn't want you to hand the client a 30-page packet. He said, if you can't fit it on your whiteboard, you don't need to cover it. That really helped with me and my style. And the client seemed to really enjoy it. Any chance I get, I'm tuning into Kits's marketing summits or other events to see how do other people do it. How are they drawing out the bucket method? How are they talking about guardrails and retirement? And how can I make that a visual representation? Because not everyone learns things just by hearing it. So it's been a lot of practice. I continue to look for resources like every day. Sometimes even too often, I have to limit myself on looking for new things that I can share with others. And then it just comes down to practice. Remember that it's the one time they'll ever see this first meeting with you. And some advisors don't actually practice. Their practice is with people. I practice when people aren't around so that when I get to the game, the lights are on and I do it the right way and there's no mistakes. Because like you said earlier, we want that one-of-one experience and you got to practice. When you watch golf, these guys aren't just practicing while they're competing for millions of dollars. They're taking thousands of practice swings that you'll never see, and that's why they're so good.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Hey, this is Judd Mackerel. Thanks for listening to this show. I just wanted to ask you one question. What's your technology and data strategy for 2025? If you can't clearly answer that question, I'd love to talk. We are spending some specific time with select firms to really go deep and help you clearly answer that question. We believe that it's one of the things that often holds back firms from really achieving their potential, from really achieving growth, and really getting a lot of the things in the position that they need to be. The things that are holding up the way that you scale, like your workflows, how you manage data around your revenue, how you report all of that to your advisors, and getting clarity in all those things. I'm sure there's a lot of very specific things to your business that are really important as well, and we'd love to talk about that. If this is interesting to you, hit me up with an email. My direct email is jud@milemarker.co, and I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, hear what your strategy is, and see if there's an opportunity for us to help you get more clear on that strategy in 2025. Thanks.
All right, let's talk a little bit about referrals. I think every firm thrives off of referrals. It's a critical part of what everybody does. And in this business, in any services business, you want raving fans of, as clients, and you want them to refer your business to other people that they know. But early in your career, you were exposed to a strategy that is a mix of confidence and competence, the 2 C's, with your style. And you get a referral commitment from your clients if you do those 2 things. But unpack that for us a little bit. Everybody listening to this gets referrals. Everybody's trying to do it through COIs. Everybody's trying to do it through providing great service. And, if I just provide great service, my clients are going to tell other people about it. That's all well and good. But I think that the people who really do a great job with this have a bit of a system or a program to it. And it seems like you've put some thought into that. So I'd love to hear you unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to unpack it. As a firm, probably 95 to 99% of our growth comes from referrals, which is weird, I think, for most firms. And what's cool is it's not just me. My wife, Kenna, partners Jennifer and Warren, our new advisors, Coy, Tyler, Carmen, everybody's getting referrals. So for myself personally, when I started in this industry, I didn't have a project 100. I had just moved to a new city. I had a project 0. I also had approach anxiety and didn't like bumping into strangers at the Piggly Wiggly and asking them if I can build them a financial plan. So I had to learn how to get referrals. And by getting referrals from your new clients and then getting referrals from those new clients, you have an unlimited stream of people you can help if you just systematize the process and follow the process. So for me, the biggest thing that I learned about getting referrals, one, of course, you have to provide value. But my mentor in the business, Brandon, back then, what he showed me was really interesting. I had a meeting with a young military person. Brandon walks in and says, "Hey, Lieutenant, how's Terry doing?" The lieutenant says, "Terry's doing great." He says, "Well, if Terry hooks up your finances, I expect that you drag at least 3 folks in here to see him that he can help next. How's that sound?" The lieutenant says, "Sounds good." Brandon walks out. And I'm like, what on earth just happened? Did he really march into my meeting, tell my client he's going to give me referrals, and my client said yes? So to just see that, I was kind of taken aback. Now, my personality is not such where I'm going to tell someone to drag in their friends. So I changed the verbiage a little bit. My style was, "Hey, Kyle, if we partner together to build a financial plan that helps you reach your goals, and you're really, really happy with the way you're able to, retire earlier and with more money, would it be okay if I circle back to you in a couple months and ask if there's anyone else you think I could help?" And I never had someone say no. So the words I actually used were, "If and only if I do a great job for you and your family, would it be okay if I slid this sheet of paper to you and asked you to help me identify maybe 3 new people that I can help?" And everyone always said yes. And then I would go through my process. I'd ask value questions. And at the end, was this helpful? What was the most helpful? "Okay, Kyle, well, since you're forcing me to, back when we started, I promised you that if and only if you saw value, I'd slide you this sheet of paper and ask you who else I could help. So we're here. I'm going to slide it to you because you asked me to. What do you think?" And often people would quickly just write down names. Sometimes they'd open their phone, or if they needed help brainstorming, we could just brainstorm. But it came down to not just identifying people I can help, but just people they care about. People that are in similar situations or situations that I would mention, and just making an introduction, and then the rest worked itself out.
That's awesome. See, I love how you unpack that. I think that's great. And it's no wonder that you're having success. And then Now my follow-up is, okay, great. You get those 3, 4, 5 names from somebody. Maybe they make a personal introduction or they don't. What's the process from there? Hey, I'm Terry. I work with so-and-so, and I'd love to see if we can help you the same way that we help so-and-so, or how do you then follow up from there?
Most of the time when I would get introductions, it was either once upon a time, my clients would bring their friends to Chili's, and we would meet over Chili's. That was like the place back in the day. There were a few other hot spots in Fort Hood, Texas. And most common, though, was an email introduction, or they would give me a phone number, and then they would text their buddy and say, hey, just a heads up, I have this advisor. He's awesome. At least entertain taking his call to see if he can help. And I would have a 5 or 10 minute phone call, and often people would come in, and the vast majority of people that came in decided to become clients because they saw the value in what we did. So back then, the process was pretty easy. Hey, Kyle, if us spending 15 minutes together could help you retire sooner and with more money, would that be worth your time? Hey, if we could help you make more money in your TSP, would that be worth 20 minutes of your time? It was just a simple if-then to a duh question. And that was often enough, coupled with the trust for people to say, sure, I'll spend 15 minutes with you. And then once they spend 15 minutes with you and they see the value, they want more. Selfishly, we want to work with those who can help make us more and help us achieve our goals. So it all worked out almost too easy. As a new advisor, I was bringing in 50 plus new clients a year by just using that simple method.
That's awesome. I got to imagine that the close rate at Chili's was probably about 100%. I mean, there's no way that you're going to hang out at Chili's and making it happen that was not just a fire strategy.
Hey, back then I was in my early 20s, and Chili's was like Ruth Chris to me. And it probably was to some of them too, because some of them were young military folks. But that was a lot of fun. I will caution you, if you're going to Chili's often for referrals, don't be like me. Have a salad every now and then. I was too often having the buffalo wings and the quesadillas, and that can get a little out of hand when you're doing a lot of social events.
Oh man, I love it. And there's no shade on Chili's. There's a guy that I like to follow on the internet. His name's Michael Girdley. He has a holding company and builds stuff. And he's built this brand about how much he loves Chili's. And I think Chili's is great, right? I like the advice though too of, hey, if you're spending a lot of time there, make smart choices about what we're eating. All right. Milemarker is a technology firm. We love to help financial advisors and RIAs with technology. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about how are you marrying technology with this obvious passion as a teacher and the way that you're growing your business. You've got 50 new clients who are coming in every year, especially back then. I don't know what it looks like today, but you got to be using technology to run your firm efficiently for this. So talk to me about how technology is making IWB a better firm every day.
Yeah, we're called Innovative Wealth Building for a reason. We're always out there assessing the environment. We're always out there testing new things. And for us, it's all about impact, efficiency, effectiveness. We have tools in place now where if someone wants to onboard with us and become a client, we can click a button, send them a link, they fill out the data, it auto-populates an app, and it can be ready to go in 2 minutes. It doesn't take 10 or 20 minutes anymore. It can be done in 1 or 2 minutes. With the financial health assessment we're about to roll out, people can fill out this form. It'll automate and pass the data somewhere that will then populate a PDF and will give them scores from A to F about their debt to income ratio, their savings rate, their all sorts of other important financial topics. So we are always looking for ways to streamline what we're doing, from meeting assistance to recap email summarization to just financial planning and single sign-on and passing data from one place to the next. We're doing everything that we can to streamline the process internally and then also with our clients. And then the last thing I would mention, we were using a tool to gather data that was a bit clunky. We then switched to ShareFile, and I've had clients tell me, this is so much better. This is so much easier. And as an independent firm, our responsibility is to make life as good as we can for our clients and our employees. So we take that super seriously. So we're always looking for how do we get more impactful, more efficient, and more effective.
Yeah, I like that. With the financial health assessment and some of the other things that you have, is this stuff that you had somebody in-house build? Did you guys work with a third party, or is it connected to some of the platforms that, most of us would know and love that live on the Kitsis map? How did you come about these things?
So we do leverage many different providers. We do FP Pathfinder, we do Holistiplan, pretty much any cool tool. I've probably touched it personally and tested it. Now, for the financial health assessment, that was a Terryism. I build a lot of things in the background, and often I build things I shouldn't. So our website's gone through several iterations. Unfortunately, I still play a large role in some of the behind the scenes building, but I've gotten better at delegating and letting the real pros do that. So the financial health assessment was actually something that I built personally. And when I was going through my master's degree study, I saw all these financial ratios that I thought were interesting and impactful. And then I went out and started building this tool that we could then use internally with our clients and then roll out to the public in general to hopefully help people assess themselves to see, are they on track in these different key areas of personal financial planning?
That's cool. I like that. So we can't talk about technology without talking about the future a little bit. So this is where I love to ask people to get out their crystal ball, look into the future a little bit. And this can be technology related. It could just be macro related, right? You can answer this question however you want. But in the seat that you sit in, you're trying to sort of peek around the corner and figure out how you should be positioning IWB for what's coming next. So what are some of the things that you're looking at, that you're paying attention to, that you're trying to position IWB for the future?
Yeah, it's anything that we can do to streamline the process of preparing and delivering to our clients. If I'm looking down the road, what I see is an advisor rolls into their meeting with their client and AI has helped put together a prep packet. That's phenomenal. It's been able to parse all of the prior conversations. It's been able to pull the most salient data points. It's been able to say who the most important people are, kids, dogs, friends, etc. It's able to prep things in a way that the advisor can almost show up a minute before the meeting and then have all this data to give the best possible meeting. Additionally, I think AI is going to be utilized in real time during meetings so that when a client says, hey, what's the maximum contribution my business can make to this step? And let's say it's January 2nd. Instead of the advisor going, oh, let me pull up the chart, the number's going to be there immediately. And they'll be able to confidently say, well, this is the number, and it will just save time. Following the engagement with the client, I think we're going to see a lot more customization. We're going to see a lot more of working together jointly versus, the advisor does all the work and then just show and tell. I think it will be more collaborative, more personalized. And then I think we're also going to see some subtle and not so subtle nudges. Yesterday, I spoke to a client about setting a budget for how much he spends at Air One, which is a super high-end grocery store in LA. And I said, if you want, we can set a budget where once you spend over $600, it emails you and says, hey, dude, cut it out. So we have those tools already. I don't think most people are using them to that level of specificity. But if I'm looking in my crystal ball, that's the level of touch and customization and encouragement that I see not too far down the road for advisors and clients.
All right, we're going to move into the final segment of the show. This is what we call the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions. The goal is to try and have them all answered in 60 seconds or less, but I'm not going to hold you to that. But are you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
I'm a little too practical, so I was going to ask how many questions so I could, but I'm ready. Let's do it.
I wish I could give you the answer. Sometimes I come up with ones based off what people say. So, it could be 4 or 5 questions. It could be more, but we're going to make it happen. So you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First question. If you could travel anywhere in the world you've never traveled to before, where would you go?
Let's say Thailand.
Thailand. All right. Are you a mountains person or a beach person?
Beach, because of my wife. She loves the beach.
Okay. What is the best flavor of ice cream?
Vanilla with sprinkles.
Oh, man, I love that. All right. If we existed in an alternate universe and Terry Parham was not a financial advisor as a career in this alternate universe, what career do you think you would have?
General contractor, home builder.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool. I like that. For those who can't see it on video, you're wearing a pin on your jacket right now. What is that pin and what is it reference to?
This is an alumni pin for the American College of Financial Services. I was with them last week at Retirement Horizons, and theoretically at some point I'll be an adjunct professor for one of their certificate designations.
I love it. That's awesome. All right. True or false, within the next 5 years, we will see an RIA with $1 trillion in AUM.
True.
All right. You made it through the mile marker minute. Great job, Terry. You killed it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of fun on this conversation. It was really cool. I was encouraged and I feel like I learned some stuff from the way that you present and the way that you talk about things. And I thought it was really insightful. So thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you having me and look forward to chatting with you more some other time.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. That's been another episode of the Connected Advisor podcast. Please make sure you click follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this or watching it. And if you'd be kind enough, please leave a review wherever you're checking this out so that somebody who's never heard of this show before can find great conversations like the one I just had with Terry. But until the next one, enjoy every mile.